Spotting the suspect!
Coming to get you, Bobber.
Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be ranking all 13 of the Halloween movies, including Halloween Ends this time. Now the last time I'd done my ranking obviously didn't include Halloween Ends. However, I think I've maybe changed the ranking around a little bit, so there will be some surprises within my ranking, but also and obviously the biggest surprise will be where I'm going to rank Halloween Ends. And at number 13 is Halloween Resurrection. Now there's nothing redeeming about this movie. It's not always at the bottom of my list. Number 12 is also at the bottom sometimes, but I've watched them all recently and there's just nothing redeeming about Halloween Resurrection at all. I think it's almost like the movie intentionally tries to annoy you, especially with the Freddy character as well. The whole Blair Witch style, camera movie, it's just so dated. The only good part of this movie was at the start, and even that wasn't good because they killed off Laurie Strode in really ridiculous fashion. So there's nothing about this film that I liked at all, so that's why it's mostly always at the bottom. And at number 12 is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and it's similar to Halloween Resurrection. It's usually at the bottom or near the bottom of the list, and it's got that similar quality to it as Halloween Resurrection, where the beginning of the movie is the strongest part, where she's in the hospital. I think that one was pretty decent, and it's probably the only reason it's above Resurrection, because if I had to rank the two openings for those two movies, Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is slightly better, but what we get after that is completely diabolical. Now in this one, Michael doesn't talk like he did in the first film, or at least he doesn't say too many words, but in this one, you've got Sherry Moon back again and she's talking to Michael, and so is the younger version of Michael talking to him. It's all ludicrous, it's all ridiculous, and I even hated Dr. Loomis in this one. I hated Laurie Strode in this one. In fact, I hated everyone. If I wanted anyone to win, it would be Michael Myers, and you shouldn't want that because even in this one, he was terrible. So there's nothing great about this film, and that's why, just like Resurrection, it's usually at the bottom of this list. And at number 11 is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. This was the beginning of the end for the Halloween franchise at this point, because they introduced the Thorn cult. This is the reason why Michael Myers is doing what he's doing. It's all this kind of witchcrafty stuff. You've got the Man in Black. It just took a turn for the worst. You've even got Jamie, who we all loved, or most of us loved, in Halloween 4, who was turned into a complete joke. She couldn't talk for most of the movie. Why would they do that? This movie came out 12 months after Halloween 4, and the difference between both movies was night and day. Even though you had the same cast, you had Meeker back, you had Loomis back, you had Jamie back. You had a recipe for something good, but they went the opposite direction with this stupid Thorn cult, and I'll never forgive Halloween 5 for doing that, because that was, again at the time, the beginning of the end for the Halloween franchise. And at number 10 is Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. And speaking of the Thorn cult, this is where they went front and centre with this storyline. Now Halloween 5 did show it quite a bit, but in this one, that's the storyline they went with. The only reason I like this one better than Halloween 5 is because even though they do give us more of this Thorn malarkey, it looked better. It looked like a better shot movie. Now I was disappointed that not only did they replace Danielle Harris with another actress, they killed her off at the beginning of the movie. Again, there's not much redeemable factors with The Curse of Michael Myers, other than it looked quite creepy and it felt like a very Halloween movie. And I didn't really like Michael Myers' mask in it. The mask looked like this mask that was made of pure clay, and it looks like if you dropped it, it would smash because it looks so heavy. So it didn't look good in the film, but it was brutal. And if you want a brutal Michael Myers, this is probably one of the most brutal Michael Myers. But the only redeeming factor with this film was it did look like a really good Halloween-y movie. And at number 9 is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Now it would have been higher up on the list if it wasn't called Halloween, but unfortunately it was called Halloween, and the first time I watched the movie I thought Michael Myers was going to be in it. I was just young when I watched it, but because of that I always remembered hating the film. But it's not a bad film. If you watch it not as a Halloween movie, it's really good. It's got a decent storyline. It is obviously the start of the anthology series that it never quite took off. But it was a good film. The good cinematography, great score, great acting, great premise for a movie that wouldn't be called Halloween. Unfortunately, it takes the Halloween name, And unfortunately, it's not a Michael Myers movie, so I can't really put it high up because it's not a movie that I would intentionally watch. But at the same time, it was very enjoyable, and it's probably overall better than some of the movies higher up on the list. But the only reason it's further down is because it's not a Michael Myers movie. It has no place on this list other than the fact it's called Halloween, but it was still a good movie. And at number 8 is Rob Zombie's Halloween. I didn't hate this film. I thought it was a good remake, but it was very brutal. And I'm not saying horror movies shouldn't be brutal. Of course they should be brutal, but it was maybe too brutal, too hillbilly. And the last half of the film, it's quite a long film, it's almost 2 hours long. The last half of the movie was good, but it was almost shot for shot for John Carpenter's remake, other than a few twists and turns. But the first part of the film is where I had the most issue with. You got a good 40 minutes of a young Michael Myers talking to Dr. Loomis most of the way through that, and we get into the mind of Michael Myers, into the psyche of Michael Myers, what makes him tick and how he becomes Michael Myers. I didn't want to see that. We get told too much. If this wasn't a Michael Myers movie and not a Halloween movie and about a little kid who goes crazy and then he ends up killing people as an adult, then great. That would be a good movie in of itself, but not a Halloween movie and not a Michael Myers movie. They explain too much. I didn't want to know too much about it, but at the same time, I still enjoyed what I saw in the second part of the film, but it was still kind of shot for shot. And you can't really win with remakes, because if you do shot for shot, then you're just going to get told, why would you remake it if it's just shot for shot? But if you do it completely different, then people are going to say you've swayed too much away from the remake. Remakes can get it done right. Halloween wasn't one of them, but at the same time, it wasn't a bad movie. And at number 7 is Halloween Kills. Now, Halloween Kills gets a lot more slack than it deserves, and I'll be honest, I had this higher up on my list last year when I first saw the movie, but after watching it a couple of times, yes, there's something missing. The dialogue's pretty bad, to be honest, but Michael Myers is what makes this movie a really good movie, and I still enjoy it because of what Michael Myers does in this film. I don't enjoy people getting killed, but the way Michael does it is great to watch. If you want to see a Halloween movie where lots of people die at the hands of Michael Myers, this is probably the one to watch. And I think it will be one of these movies that will become better as time goes by. Just for me, it got slightly worse, to be honest, but I think it will creep back up again at some point. I think it's a really good movie, and it doesn't deserve the hate that it gets. And I do understand some of the hate that it does get with Evil Dies Tonight, etc. But that's just a small part of the movie, and I could see what they were trying to do with it. It just didn't really pay off. But at the end of the day, it's a brutal movie. It's got a lot of kills in it, and it is called Halloween Kills at the end of the day. I just don't think it's as good as some of the other films on this list. And at number 6 is Halloween Ends, the newest entry on the list. Now, just like Halloween Kills, this may go further down and my list will always change. But at this point, it's a solid 6 just now, at number 6 I should say. And it was a really good film, but like I said in my reviews, it felt like 2 movies in one. It felt like a Michael Myers movie, but it also felt like a Corey Cunningham movie as well. And I liked the Corey Cunningham storyline better than the Michael Myers storyline. If only they gave us a Michael Myers storyline that we should have got, and then they gave us a Corey Cunningham story in an anthology series, that would have been a lot better. But because I really liked the Corey Cunningham aspect and the psyche behind Corey and how he became how he came, I think it was a really interesting movie. And I think I will like this movie better with time, and I will like it the more I watch it. But at this moment in time, I think number 6 is decent for a finale. And at number 5 is Halloween from 2018. And I think this is a movie that gets better with time, because at first when I watched it, I thought it was really good. And then when I watched Halloween Kills, I felt like I liked Halloween Kills better. But as you go back to this one, back to what I would say the David Gordon Green roots, is if he stuck to what he'd done in 2018, I think Kills and Ends would have been a lot better. But I know that COVID got in the way and they had to change the story and the script, etc. But when you do look at 2018, it was a better made movie than the next 2 movies in his trilogy. The story was tighter, and I think that the reasons behind some of the things that Laurie done and Alison and Karen, etc., I think we could get behind those characters more because they were new at the time, but you also had Laurie back again. Maybe it was because it was the return of Laurie Strode after so many years, etc., after Halloween H2 and Resurrection. And because it was a top quality movie, that maybe, and still is, maybe blinding my judgment. But when you watch it yourselves, guys, I think this one will age better than kills and ends, and for that reason it's higher up on the list. And at number 4 is Halloween 2 from 1981, Rick Rosenthal's Halloween 2. And speaking of Rick Rosenthal, how can he go from Halloween 2 to Halloween Resurrection? There has to be something involved there with the story writing. But Halloween 2, although it wasn't a perfect film, I think it benefits from being set on the same night as the original from 1978, and it also benefits from the hype and hysteria that we had from the original movie, and again it also benefits from being filmed in a similar style to the original movie. So when you look at Halloween 2, it looks beautiful, it sounds amazing, everything about it is very similar to the original movie, and I think that's why it's high up on my list and high up on a lot of people's lists. But there's something about Michael Myers in this movie that just didn't sit quite right with me, and it obviously is because it's played by Dick Warlock and not Nick Castle. I think if Nick Castle came back as the Walking Shape, then maybe I would be invested in that Michael Myers more. But I do really like it. It's a very nostalgic movie for me because I used to watch this back to back with the original. So it's obviously a very nostalgic movie. Not the perfect Halloween movie, but a lot better than what we got after it. And at number 3 is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This is one of the ones that I used to rent in the video store when I was a kid. And I used to always think to myself, is Michael Myers going to be in it this time? Because we didn't get him in Halloween 3. And yes, of course we did, because it's called The Return of Michael Myers and he's on the front cover. So I was just so happy to see Michael Myers back that I didn't care if the movie was bad. But the movie wasn't bad. It was so eerie. The beginning of the film was so eerie as well. I think everyone talks about the opening credits to this movie. It's something that you can't really replicate. You know, after what you got after Halloween 4, the opening credits were never as good until the David Gordon Green trilogy. But there's just something about those opening credits that were just so eerie. They also introduced a character that I could connect with, and that was that little girl, Jamie. When I was a little boy, I watched this movie, and I watched other Halloween movies, and I never could quite connect with these characters because they were all too old for me to connect with. But when I saw Jamie, I thought, okay, this is a character around about my age when I watched the movie. And I can get invested in that, and I got behind Jamie, and I think a lot of people did as well, even people today watching it back after all these years. So I'm invested in Jamie, but not only am I invested in Jamie, I love Dr. Loomis in this one, I loved Rachel, I love Sheriff Meeker, I loved his daughter, but this movie, it just felt like it was back to basics. It had that really creepy atmosphere as well. The score wasn't brilliant, but the score was okay, but it was just this very creepy, back to basics Halloween movie, only this time it had someone, Jamie, that I could get invested in. The ending was epic as well. I loved the ending of the movie, and I was looking forward to seeing what they would have done in Halloween 5, but they shat themselves. But the ending was epic, and something that I wish came to fruition after it. Maybe we'll see that in future movies, I don't know, but overall, I loved Halloween 4. And at number 2 is Halloween H2O, 20 years later. This is probably a controversial one for some people because this movie's hated by a lot of people, and I didn't understand the hate, and I still don't understand the hate for this film. You know, from the way the mask looked to setting it in California, etc. That's a lot of gripes that a lot of people have. It's a Scream knockoff, etc. And I always try and defend this movie as best as I can, and there's only so many times I can do it. You know, the mask, the eye holes in the mask are not anywhere bigger than the rest of the masks in the movie, but at this point in 1998 in Hollywood, they had to light the film itself the way they did, and by doing that, you're going to get to see more of his eyes. If they lit Halloween from 1978 the same way, you probably see more of Michael's eyes. But in this one, I also think it seems like it was intentional to see his eyes, because this was the first time in 20 years that Laurie was going to see Michael Myers. So you had to see them lock eyes with each other just to see the look in both of their eyes, to see that he's still alive, and for him to see, Laurie, it's you, I found you after 20 years. I needed to see that connection, and I got that with Halloween H2O. It was fantastic. Not only that, I didn't mind that they set it in California. You've got Kerry Tate, who's Laurie Strode. She's changed her name. She's living somewhere else. She's living halfway across the United States. Why wouldn't you move away from Haddonfield? It feels like a more realistic Laurie Strode in H2O than it was in the David Gordon Green trilogy. And then we get probably the most epic finale in any Halloween movie, where she chops his head off. You know, I didn't see that coming. Nobody saw that coming, and that was him dead forever. Ignoring Halloween Resurrection, of course. that was just an epic ending to a really good, what we would call a trilogy. Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and Halloween H2O. That would have been the perfect trilogy for me. However, they had to go and cash in and make more movies. And maybe that's why some people didn't like H2O, because they see that connection with Resurrection. But if you ignore Resurrection and just see H2O as the ultimate finale, it's absolutely amazing. And at number 1 is, of course, the original Halloween from 1978. There's only so many times I can tell you that this movie is amazing. There's only so many things I can say about this film. It's a masterpiece. You know, it's John Carpenter's masterpiece. There was maybe some things about it that people didn't like from 1978, but we've got reason for things to like it now. For example, you know, a lot of the mistakes that they make in this film are now seen as intentional when they're probably not. The acting wasn't great by everyone apart from Donald Pleasence. You know, Donald Pleasence maybe overacted in this film. He was maybe too good for it. Jamie Lee Curtis, her acting was good, and it obviously looked like she was going places, but everyone else was pretty bad. But because you got that amazing cinematography, that creepy score, just the look, the feel, the atmosphere of this film, the mystique of Michael Myers, it takes you away from all the negatives that you might have had for this movie back in the day. And it obviously would have been a really scary movie to watch back in 1978. Today it seems very tame, and it is. It's now a 15 rated movie in the UK now. It used to be an 18, but because things have moved on, it's now a 15. So that's how tame that movie is for today's standards. But at the same time, you can't ignore the fact that this isn't the ultimate masterpiece in horror directing. So that is my ranking for all the Halloween movies, guys. But what I'm really interested in is where you would rank Halloween Ends on this list. We all rank all the movies over and over again, and I think my ranking will change over time. It might even change before the end of the year. But number 6 is where I put Halloween Ends just now. But where do you place Halloween Ends? Leave your comments down below. Let me know your ranking, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.